course.
All right, I'm just gonna make sure this is recording. Awesome. So we have a few people joining us today, and then a few people who are waiting for the recording because they are unable to join us.
Great.
Um, yeah, so I know we only have half an hour here, so we can go ahead and get started. But before we do, how has your day been?
It's good. Good. I'm in the middle. I have office hours on Wednesday. So we had our first final from my big class, the Science of Peak Performance,
Yeah.
where we have students perform and they do goals. So they'll present new companies, they'll present new products. They all work on their own big personal goal. And the final session is when they present everything to the whole class. So it's really fun. It's like a showcase talent show. And so it's been really fun. I've been meeting with a lot of students and just kind of saying goodbye to a few students that I've gotten to know really well over the semester. And as well as the students who also still have finals for my other business classes as well. So it's a good day. Wednesdays are jam packed. So it's but it's fun. It keeps you on your toes.
That's awesome. Well, I'm glad to hear it. And I remember yeah, there's some pretty awesome goals that people were setting beforehand.
Oh
So
yeah, yeah.
I'm sure it was awesome. So then let's go ahead and get started. If anyone joins this later, they'll just join in halfway through.
Great.
um, so I wanted to kind of just start off with prefacing that, for people who don't know you, you are a neuroscientist by trade, but you teach at USC now teaching peak performance, and have done a lot of research in gratitude. So can you tell us a little bit more about, what you've done and discovered in the gratitude world, as well as what you define gratitude as?
Big questions. So, I've been studying gratitude now for 10 years, and throughout the time, it never ceases to amaze me how important gratitude can be for our mental health and our well-being, how
Mhm.
much people who really aim to be their best use gratitude as a way to connect with that, to connect with meaning, to connect with each other. So it resonates really well with people. So the science is really clear that gratitude can have these really good benefits. And I see it with people that I meet everywhere, that they talk about gratitude. And it's actually one of the most interesting groups of people that really appreciates gratitude are the most high performing type A professional doctors, Navy SEALs, researchers, science, the people who really like to run at the outer limit, and really high achieving goal oriented people tend also to really want to know and draw deeply from what we know about gratitude. So
Mm.
for me, studying this is great because it has a really interesting scientific background, because of how hard it is to study something like gratitude, which is a very vague and touchy-feely kind of concept, but the science behind that can actually be done very rigorously. The the other interest, of course, is in doing science that can help people. So I'm really interested in using science as a tool to tell people, hey, do this, not that. And then without any agenda of my own, which is really nice. I don't have to be the fancy guru that I struggle with life's stressors just like anybody else. But it's really great because it's my job to just tell people about the science and then get out of the way, which is a wonderful thing. So we've been studying gratitude in this way for a long time, and we've definitely found, in my research, we've studied the physiology of gratitude, meaning we've studied what happens in our body when we experience gratitude, and how does practicing gratitude perhaps change what the body does and how it handles it. So that's my background. That's the thing that I'm most interested in. And then because I'm in the business school, and this is the best part for me, is really talking to young entrepreneurs and young founders about the role that gratitude can have in growing their ventures. In how does gratitude influence the way you start companies? How does gratitude influence the way you build founding teams? How does it influence the deals you make with people? And how does it influence your business to business relationships? Can be aided with appropriate levels of gratitude. it has a wonderful application to business for that meaning. So I'm really interested in gratitude from everything from the theoretical, kind of crazy, hard to define what really is gratitude thing, to talking to anybody about gratitude, and then, helping people in business settings use gratitude to improve their performance and career prospects. So then the question of how do we define gratitude? I've said it's great, I've said all these different things. What exactly do we mean by what is gratitude? You hear a lot about it. You may be headed to a Thanksgiving Zoom session next week, which we're all going to do responsibly to help prevent the spread of COVID, of course. So you may be headed to a virtual or an outdoor Thanksgiving where people will ask you, okay, let's go around and everybody say what they're grateful for. And it brings up a lot of vulnerable feelings for people at times. And I remember being younger, especially being, a child, and when the adults tell us what you're grateful for, like the pressure grows up and you feel that sense of awkwardness and vulnerability. And it actually is cool because that is getting close to the definition of gratitude. So there are a few different ways to define gratitude. The most technical one, the one that we use in science, is that gratitude is a feeling we can have when we receive something that we need that comes at some amount of effort from another person. So we're talking about interpersonal gratitude here, that for us to feel grateful for something, we should need it at some level. It should be, a psychological need. It could be a safety need. It could be a bodily need or whatever. And then it should come at some degree of effort, meaning there should not be ulterior motives. Somebody should not be giving it to us to manipulate us. It should be. There's a lot of research showing that we compare what we get to what we thought we could get. So entitlement is a big killer of gratitude in that regard. If you think somebody has a lot to give and they only give you a little bit, you'll be less grateful than if you think they're giving you everything they have, right? And
Mm-hmm.
that's everybody. I'm not saying that you know anybody's really special. We all have that. We all do that mental math when we receive something from somebody, and that can gratefully influence the level of gratitude that we feel. So gratitude equals effort plus need. What I like about that definition is you have the chance to break apart effort and need. You can think about gifts that you get that are one or the other. So sometimes we get things that we need very much, but don't come at much effort. So you think about even like your direct deposit paycheck is a good example, where you just think, oh yeah, I deserve that, great. And then there are other things where we get things that come at great effort that don't fulfill any important need. And those are some of the most awkward gifts, so those are gifts where somebody will say, imagine I cook you an all beef barbecue and you are a vegetarian. My effort might be good, it might be well intentioned, but you don't need it. And you can still feel some degree of gratitude for each of those things, but notice that the gratitude we have will be the most when both of those conditions are met. Imagine that I'm a big red-blooded meat eater and you're a vegetarian, and I cook you a wonderful vegetarian barbecue along with everything that we're doing. So you're going to say, wow, you really saw this. That's cool. I needed this, and it took a lot of effort. That's where you start getting into the higher levels of gratitude. So that's how we start to, by defining gratitude, that's where we can begin to practice and cultivate
Wow, that's awesome. That was a lot of gold nuggets of like
it.
wisdom in there, like balancing effort and need, and the touching upon vulnerability, which is interesting because I think a lot of people um kind of skip out on that idea. Like, I remember for me, one of my challenges of practicing gratitude was the idea of just being grateful for what you have, right? And like everything that you have, like you could be grateful for being able to walk because there's people who can't walk. And so I think when people learn gratitude, that's one lens to look at it is being grateful for what you have by comparison, because what you have is more than what other people have. But this takes it to a different level of it's actually what you have that came at some cost,
Mhm.
right? So, yeah, what you had said before too was we get gratitude when we get something that comes to like at a cost of something that helps us out. And when I heard that, it reminded me a lot about sacrifice. So when we practice gratitude, is that where we should put our focus on, in which we can really feel it authentically? Is focusing on the sacrifice?
Well, I have two things here. So first of all, be careful with using your comparison to other people to develop gratitude.
Mhm,
We should be grateful to walk because walking helps us, not
mhm,
because other people might not be able to walk. You know,
mhm,
and we should be grateful for the use of all of our digits because they're useful, right? Or whatever it is, not because other people don't have that. Because the issue with comparing how much gratitude we should feel to where other people are is that it's a very quick slope downward, right? Because let's say you are really in a bad shape, let's say you are really poorly affected. If you are really down in the dregs and you feel sick and maybe you're out of money and things are real bad, I still believe that there's gratitude to be had there. And that's where the skill of gratitude, and that's where I think gratitude can lift us up. But the skill will
mhm,
come from still the managing to see abundance, even during and especially during the really tough times.
mhm,
If we're using other people as our social comparison to develop gratitude, then the really tough times when gratitude can really lift, we're going to be hollow because we're going to be able to say, well, I may be sick and broke, but at least I'm not what like at least you're still alive, I guess, at least you're not
mhm,
dead. So the abundance comes from saying like, well, at least I have the ability to recognize my tough situation and I can work on that, you
mhm,
know. And so that's really the big skill of it is figuring out the practice of developing that abundance independent of other people's context. So
mhm,
the next thing is then, okay, what about the sacrifice of others can you look at? And the thing is that I think it's less about finding that every gift came at some sacrifice. I think that can be really good. I think the skill is rather seeing people's best intentions for gifts that are at least meant to help us in some degree, right? Seeing people's best intention. Um, and maybe you were lucky enough to go buy a latte or a cup of coffee from somewhere. And that person who made the coffee is at the end of a very long supply chain that took to create that coffee. Coffee is not grown in America, as far as I know, or sorry, in the United States of America. It's grown in America. It's not grown in the USA. It's grown in other places all over the world. And it starts as like this weird little cherry that they have to get the nut. I mean, it's insane
yeah,
what it takes to create that cup of coffee. And so each step of the way, of course, people they may or may not be sacrificing. Of course, you want fair trade coffee.
mhm,
I believe that's important. Um, so they may or may not be sacrificing, but darn it if they're not like putting some effort into that simple cup of coffee, right? Like it kind of takes the whole world to think about what it takes to have a cup of coffee. It's an exotic beverage. We get it every day, and we're so used to it um, that we completely take it for granted. But it literally takes the whole world to get a cup of coffee in our own hands. So the skill of seeing effort is really seeing just kind of the magic of human connection
mhm,
that spans across everything that we need to function. If you think about the amount of engineering and the amount of time it took for us to be able to be however many miles apart and still talking synchronously via video, this was like something from the future. You're a lot younger than I am, but when I was a kid, it was like this crazy idea like, oh my gosh, you can have video chat.
mhm,
And even 10 years ago, video chat was terrible.
right,
And you had nothing. And now it's like I'm running my whole life on this thing. That's
mhm,
bananas. A lot of really good engineers had to do good work for this to work. I wish that the engineers that made my Wi-Fi could have made it a little faster, but they did good. Still the same. I still have Zoom freezing every once in a while, so it goes. But look, I think that's the thing is not the sacrifice can be there, but
mhm,
also remember the trick of gratitude is to find the uplifting elements of gratitude without the guilt. And if you're only using people's sacrifice to build your gratitude, we risk using guilt as a way to create it. And that I think that maybe can have a role, but the better uplift thing is to see things as accurately as possible, to go, wow, look, it took the whole world to make this cup of coffee, rather than like crying, on your barista's shoulder about everything that he did to make your latte. Just giving a hearty, well, thank you, is probably great. And to notice and just notice the magic of that cup of coffee. And you don't have to fall over in tears of gratitude every time, but to notice that abundance of like, man, this is pretty darn amazing, that we're able to get this. So that's really the skill of it. And then sometimes there is sacrifice, that if you see better, you do have increased gratitude, but I don't think it comes from guilt. I think that comes from really recognizing, everything it takes to put the world together so that we can use it.
Yeah, I love that the intersection that I'm seeing between gratitude and mindfulness. And like when you talk about joy and like what is joy and how do you find joy, what you were saying about using comparison and how that can actually hurt, and guilt as well to create gratitude, is kind of the same concept of chasing happiness, where happiness is fleeting, but in joy, right? They've done studies on people who survived the Holocaust and how they were able to stay mentally resilient, and how joy was found from like being able to be outside and still like sticking through the hardships. And so it
Mhm.
sounds like gratitude comes from that same vein of it's a mindfulness practice.
Yeah, I absolutely believe it is. And um, I think a lot of great mindfulness work can come from gratitude,
Mhm.
right? Because it does pull you in the present moment. I mean, the best way to be grateful is to look around, to open your eyes, to look up from your computer screen and stare at the window, or stare at the wall or whatever, and see just this moment. There probably are a lot of nice things that we normally discount. And then when that can relax, then we can shape some really good mindful activities around noticing things that are nice, and then holding those things in mind.
Mhm.
And other people would say mindfulness is really just to absorb your mind with one singular focus, or good or bad, and that's fine, sure. But I do think gratitude and mindfulness have a wonderful relationship to each other, particularly when mindfulness becomes part of our ability to deal with stress and anxiety.
Mhm.
Using gratitude and self-compassion meditation to sort of give ourselves a break, to focus on the good stuff, just for however short, even for 10 seconds, can definitely make a big dent um, in how we feel in any given moment. Most moments are actually pretty good, really. I mean, I'd say 99.99% of moments are actually like totally fine. And we imagine a lot of things going on. We imagine a bad future. We imagine personal slights. We imagine things that hurt our ego. We imagine things people did that we're taking personally. Fine. But if you really look around, there are very, very few like truly objectively bad moments. Um,
Mhm.
and most of the time when we're suffering, it's because of the story we're telling in our head. And
Right.
gratitude does help us do that, to recognize like, hey, this moment, I can live with this moment for 10, 15 seconds. And then I'll go back to telling a bad story in my head. But most moments are actually pretty acceptable.
Right. Right. Kind of that idea that like it was a defense mechanism, right? That we
Yep.
needed to focus on what was bad, but now
Mhm.
we're stressed and anxious like more than ever, and especially being stuck in our confines. But
Yes.
even then, it's like there's so much to be grateful for, right? Just being able to be in a like have a roof over your head and stuff. Um,
Yeah.
but I think one thing I want to ask in terms of practicing gratitude, right, and developing and cultivating this skill is when we talk about people who struggle with depression and anxiety, and I went through the struggle myself for 6+ years. It was really difficult for me to practice gratitude authentically and kind of feel what it felt like completely. And you have mentioned, you talk about how you yourself hold a gratitude journal that you write in every day. You always encourage your students to write down what you're grateful for, and that simple practice can help a lot. But I was noticing for myself at the time that that wasn't enough for me. And part of it was definitely the comparison to like find gratitude. Um, but the other part is just like not being able to feel it, like that
Mhm.
disconnect. So can you talk about like scientifically, like from your research, how can you build that mind body connection to actually feel gratitude?
Well, the good way to think of it, and so for one thing, when we're suffering and we're dealing with depression and anxiety for a prolonged period of time, it takes an immense amount of courage and work to lift ourselves out. And something like gratitude, I think, can do that, can help with that, but it also, nobody should ever hesitate to talk to a professional, and to that can really help speed that along as well. Talking to somebody in the mental health field can help pick you up considerably. So anybody's listening, there's, your car's broken, you go to the mechanic. Your foot's broken, you go to the podiatrist. Your heart's broken, you go to a mental health professional, go see a therapist. So there's no stigma, as far as there should be no stigma around this. It takes courage to get fixed, and it's just what you do when things aren't working. So
Mhm.
um, so the second part of your question is, okay, how do we, you've got me telling you that gratitude is good. The thing you have to remember is that gratitude is like a muscle. Your brain is a muscle, pretty much, but
Mhm.
there's not many ways. Your brain is almost more like a muscle than your muscles are. So pretty much
Okay.
everything you say that's right about um, muscles can be said about the brain.
Mm.
And what that means is actually quite hopeful, but it also means it's hopeful and not hopeful in the same way. That the hopeful aspect is that your muscles can get stronger when you practice lifting things, right?
Mhm.
And your muscles get stronger and more flexible when you flex them. And you become more limber, and you become more strong, and you become more resilient through repeated micro stressors of your muscle, right?
Mhm.
And gratitude is the same way, that practicing gratitude little by little, and really what you're trying to do is not hope that some magical feeling overwhelms you and you feel enlightened forever. It's just tuning your antenna to getting a little bit of that dose of gratitude, that feeling of like, oh, that is okay. That just
Mhm.
is a little bit of feeling. And you just go through things until you start to feel that, like, okay, oh, that feels okay for a few seconds, millisecond,
Mhm.
fine. And what you're trying to do is tune into that feeling, that emotion of gratitude through practicing it. So when you write things down, try writing big things down and little things down. Try writing like, I'm grateful for this pen that I have, right? Gel pens are superior pens. I don't care what anybody says. I like these pens a lot. They're the best ones for me. And I am very grateful to always have a stack of them. This pen I think I've had for years. I literally keep my pens for years.
Oh,
Um, and I like get attached and fond of my pens because they never let me down. Gel pens, the best
I
pens.
love
So
that. Yes,
so right, so this little
I
pen, I'm like,
agree.
this pen is kicking butt. I'm loving this pen, right? And then there's big things like, oh, the sun is out today, or oh, it's raining,
Mhm.
cozy. Then there's these big kind of things. To me, focusing on the little things and being like, man, that pen is like really holding me up right now. That gives me a little sense of that resonance of like, it's working pretty good. And then especially when you start thinking about little things people do that might make your life a little bit easier.
Mhm.
Um, Noticing those things as a muscle that flexes. Now, the downside of muscle building is like of your brain being like a muscle is that we want to be strong right away. We want to walk to
Mhm.
the gym and be the strongest, fittest, fastest person. And it's frustrating sometimes when you're not. It's frustrating because you have to crawl, walk, run in everything that
Mhm.
we do. And the gratitude analogy works exactly the same way. That we hear all this stuff about gratitude. We hear that it is very effective for people dealing with anxiety and depression. We hear that it's effective for people going through really tough stuff. And we just want that thing to be fixed right away. Because we're uncomfortable, we want it to be fixed. And so just fix it. That's our mentality around this stuff. It's like, just fix it. Get rid of it.
Mhm.
I don't like this. I don't want
Mhm.
to be uncomfortable ever again. I don't want to be sad
Yeah.
ever again. And gratitude isn't about never being sad ever again. Gratitude is not about being happy all the time. Gratitude is not um, just meant to be a blunt instrument that lifts us whenever we're down. The same way going to the gym, you have to lift little by little and get stronger by stronger over time. Practicing gratitude little by little gets you stronger for gratitude over time, so that when the tough stuff really does happen, you're able to lift a little bit more.
Yeah. I like the idea of like small steps like crawl, walk, run.
Hmm.
And what you're saying reminds me a lot of Brene Brown's idea of um, fixed mindset versus growth mindset, right? Being able
Hmm.
to have, like, we have, our brains have neuroplasticity, right? We can learn new things at any time. And
Hmm.
you yourself, you have a newborn son,
Hmm.
which is amazing. And I was curious, like, how are you going to go about teaching him gratitude and to really help him cultivate that practice?
Man, you're going deep. No, I mean, look, we're going to talk about gratitude every day at,
Hmm.
at the dinner table. We're going to talk about what went well today. We don't necessarily have to call it gratitude every time because I think that can tighten people up.
Hmm.
We'll just say, what did you do well? What did you do well today? What went well? And what are we looking forward to tomorrow? Um, so we're talking about that every day. And and I think helping him just recognize and identify things. But you can't make people feel gratitude. You can't tell him, Bennett, I've had to work pretty hard for your little life here, buddy. That won't make him feel grateful. When he's in kindergarten, I remind him of how much daycare costs.
Mm,
He's not
yeah.
going to feel grateful for that. He's going to say, these things have to develop over time, and so I think just teaching him to recognize and be recognize people who are considerate, people who give when they don't need to, and saying thank you, of course, will be really important. But I do want it to be part of his ability. Some people are very grateful, and that just showing gratitude, saying thank you is important. Um, but I think there's a good thoughtfulness that goes underneath it that I hope he has. So hopefully by
Mm.
modeling it myself is also probably the best way that he'll get it. It's an interesting question.
Yeah. Well, no, that's really good to know. And my sister has two very young little ones, so uh, also a question for her. Also, if anyone in the audience right now has a question for Dr. Fox, feel free to put it in the chat.
Yeah,
Um,
I got a few minutes, no problem.
yeah. If not, we can kind of wrap this up because we are
Yeah.
coming close on time. So I do want to thank you again so much for your time and sharing all of these things. I definitely took a lot out of this. I'm like gonna go write down all these takeaways of like vulnerability and like true gratitude. But for the audience listening as well, do you have one action step other than just writing down what you're grateful for that people can do to effectively experience more gratitude?
I would say just look around your wherever you are and find the first object you look at and try to be grateful for it. I think that's, as corny as that sounds, like I'm looking at like the draw cord on our blind here because I've set my desk up to look out a window because I spend all day
Uh-huh.
on Zoom and I literally move my desk
Yes.
across my office. I'm like not staring at the
Yeah.
wall, I'm staring out the window. And
Yeah.
so I'm like in the awkward spot of the room, but I'm looking out the window. So I'm looking at my little blinds over here. And I'm like, man, it took a lot of work to make the little handle that I use every time to start the day. So find something in your room, find something in your view, and just see if you can get a little bit of gratitude for it.
I love that. That's definitely an amazing tool to keep in mind. Um, I
And we do
think,
have a question from Stacy.
yes. I find it hard to find gratitude for myself. Any tips?
Just flex, it's a muscle. Little tiny bits, little bits here and there. Just look around. And you'll also learn to notice that you feel grateful probably more often than you think you do. But really practicing writing it down, write down things you're grateful for every day, and then review every couple of days. Go back and review your journal, or once a week, go back and review your journal. You don't even have to do it every day. Research has shown that filling out a gratitude journal, even once a week, can almost be more effective than writing it down every day. So just write things you're grateful for down, write big things and little things, and then pay attention to how they make you feel.
Yeah. Awesome. Very good and practical tips.
I hope that helps, Stacy. Thank you for your question.
Yes. Awesome. Uh, oh, Sam has a question as well. If you have the time.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I got one more.
uh, what can you do when daily gratitude starts to feel numb and it's hard to truly get that feeling daily?
Just take a break. take a break, give it a week, um, and then reread notes and give yourself a break, just
Mm,
literally and figuratively.
mhm,
When it starts to feel numb, change it up somehow. Go on a walk and look around and try to just walk for 10 minutes and notice things you're grateful for. And then when you're just like, I'm not even feeling this right now, just take a break and just go for a walk anyway. Go listen to some music. Just take a break. This stuff is not meant, we like to believe it would take X numbers of gratitude, journal entries, and we'll feel X amount, Y amount happier. And it's a very nonlinear system. It doesn't, it'll surprise you. It'll sneak up on you. Just like working out, you might have one, they do the same workout every day for a week or whatever for 6 months and not feel anything, and then one day, boom, you can lift or you can flex, or stretch in some really cool way. Gratitude is the same way. You can also let that muscle recover for a little bit and just do something else with your mind. If you're so disciplined to have that mental practice that you do every day, do a normal meditation, count some breaths, go do forest bathing, like go find some part of nature and just walk around and breathe. Yeah, so take a break, but noticing when it's numb is um, is a great time just to go, okay, I'm gonna take a break and recover a little bit, and then get back on it when it feels good. Just let it flow. Wait for it to resonate.
awesome. I love the idea of forest bathing. Really interesting. I never heard that term before. I'm
Oh
gonna.
yeah, it's a whole thing. It's called Shinrin-yoku. It's a whole
Oh,
like Japanese tradition. There's a ton of research on it. It's actually fantastically powerful.
I'm gonna definitely look into it after this.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you so much again. I really appreciate your time. You took away from like your students, your kids, and everything. So like, thank you so much. And I will be sending out this recording to you as well if you want to share with your students.
Of course, and
So
please, anybody out there, please go ahead and you can follow me on Instagram. You can be of the couple hundred people
yes.
I have. I just started Instagram, well, I guess a little bit ago, like a couple months ago. I don't care that much about it, but I love to get to know more people out there. So I'm at Dr. Glenn Fox on Instagram, and I'm at Glenn R. Fox on Twitter. GLENNRFOX.
Awesome. I will put those in an email out to everybody who came today and everyone who
Great.
wanted the recording so they can follow you and include your email as well. Hopefully,
Sure.
if they have
Yeah, go for
questions.
it. Yeah, Glenn
Okay,
Fox at USC.
awesome. Well, thank you so much one more time, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Okay, likewise. Happy holidays. See you later, Jen.
Yes,
Thanks.
bye.
Thanks, guys. Talk to you later.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.